everyone, Novels Wonderland here. Thank you all for the love and support you've shown me and the channel.
Oshi no Ko, I just wanted to be in a band. Chapter 89 to 99, Side Story, A Brief Rest. On a dark night where even the moonlight was faint, AI, wearing a hat pressed down low with a mask and oversized clothes to avoid being recognized, was swinging her legs on a sofa inside Strawberry Productions, waiting for her beloved. It was well past closing time, so the other members of Bikomachi had long since gone home, and the employees of Strawberry Productions were packing their things and clocking out. Oh my, how cute. Are you waiting for Hyde? To think our Strawberry Productions top troublemaker has been turned into such a proper lady. He really is something. The day AI had brought enfant terribles to Strawberry Productions had become legendary within the agency. There wasn't a soul who didn't know about the relationship between AI and Hyde. For the record, Hyde hadn't finished work yet. Though the songs were complete, he was in a private meeting with President Sato, discussing the finer details of the album's concept. AI fiddled with her phone, debating whether to send a text, but after much thought, she closed it. I can't interfere with his work as a fellow pro. However, AI intended to pull her beloved into a crushing embrace the moment his work as the superstar Hyde ended and he returned to the usual, slightly clumsy Hyde. How hard had she worked in the practice room just a while ago to avoid showing their relationship? AI had suppressed the urge to initiate physical contact at will, her usual style, with superhuman patience. Hyde is always so busy. Though AI was usually insensitive to news within the entertainment industry, she was well aware that Hyde had become someone monumental since the release of the second album. Ever since Enfant Terribles had jetted off to America last December, AI had spent every spare moment scrutinizing every interview and broadcast appearance the band made. There was no way she couldn't know. She obsessively followed the band's activities and shared her daily life with him, trying to understand the growing weight on Hyde's shoulders as his work became more demanding. Before his massive success, Hyde enjoyed his work and overflowed with positivity, but recently, she got the strong impression that he was barely holding on by sheer force of will. Hyde, you've become way too famous. Truthfully, when she first began stalking him, she never imagined they would end up in a relationship like this. She recalled those days when Hyde used to avoid her, saying things like, "I'm going to end up in jail at this rate." Their first encounter began with admiration. An admiration for his sincerity. Then, as she followed his busking sessions, that emotion turned into interest. As time passed and their meetings repeated, that feeling transformed into love. And now, for her, life with Hyde had become her daily life and her happiness, occupying more than half of her existence. 1 year was more than enough time for a girl who used to scream, love, with lies to fill a void to finally love someone with sincerity. Ah, AI, I'm sorry. I was caught up in discussions with President Sato. Lost in thought and failing to notice her surroundings, AI jumped like a startled rabbit, her eyes widening at the sudden voice. Hyde was actually more surprised by her reaction, but AI had no way of knowing that. Her only thought was to dive into Hyde's arms. AI, this is a public place. Hee, it's inside Strawberry Productions, so it's fine. AI and Hyde walked home hand in hand, as they always did. Though they contacted each other frequently, it had been a long time since they shared body heat and conversation in person. Both AI and Hyde were laughing and talking more lightheartedly than usual. What did you talk about with President Sato? Since the Bikomachi concept is changing, I suggested it might be better to manage it in a way that highlights the individual colors of the other members more. We were consulting on that. He certainly, Hyde, you said I was like a first love, that I was prettier than in photos. Isn't that right? So AI is just a caught fish now. Was that your preference all along, Hyde? Ah. No, I just said exactly what I felt, and I said you were like a first love. I didn't say you were one. Wait, my first love is you anyway, AI. Ugh. She had been walking with her arms crossed, glaring at him sharply during the conversation, but Hyde's sudden shock declaration made her face turn beet red and practically explode. Once AI's rationality crumbled, her already wide strides, which usually showed no consideration for others, became even wider and faster. To an onlooker, it looked concerning enough that one might fear her hip joint would pop out. AI, you're going to hurt yourself at that rate. However, AI's height was only around 151 centimeters. From the perspective of Hyde, who stood at a tall 186 centimeters, no matter how much AI widened her stride, it was almost laughable. As if mocking AI's wide steps, Hyde strode forward and effortlessly overtook her, blocking her path. Eek. AI, lamenting her short height at Hyde's behavior, shot him a look full of pettiness and sulking. Ah, did I tease you too much? Let's go to the convenience store. I'll buy you some Haagen-Dazs. I'm definitely not going to be swayed by something like that. Despite her words, Hyde watched with a warm smile, one he had never shown once in America, as AI hurried toward the convenience store with light steps. He began to follow her. Haagen-Dazs. Is it really that good? At a convenience store table located in a secluded spot with little foot traffic, the handsome man and beautiful woman created an intimate atmosphere. It was now October, and the temperature fluctuations between day and night were significant. A chilly wind was blowing, but AI had stacked Haagen-Dazs cups beside her, and was shoveling it in as if it were bibimbap. It was just a plain plastic bench under a parasol, but talking face to face in a place like this had its own charm. Come to think of it, Hyde, why do you always refuse whenever I say I'll treat you? The blonde young man watched her, carefully wiping a drop of chocolate Haagen-Dazs that had fallen on AI's clothes, and was slowly melting, as he pondered the answer. Honestly, buying a few Haagen-Dazs for a woman was zero financial burden for a man like Hyde. Even now, his albums were flying off the shelves worldwide, and money was flooding into his bank account. Since he was still legally a minor and couldn't invest yet, the money was essentially rotting away. Because buying things for you is one of the joys of my life. Having lived his entire past life as an ordinary citizen, Hyde had almost no desires outside of music. For food, a pork cutlet from a cheap diner was enough, and as long as his home was reasonably comfortable, Hyde was a man who lived a satisfied life. AI wore a look of incomprehension at his answer, but that was simply Hyde's nature. How can that be a joy of life? Because it's you. You look sincerely happy when you eat Haagen-Dazs. Seeing that look is my joy in life. As she listened to Hyde, AI was suddenly struck by a question. If he was going to spend money, he could spend it on Uncle Shuji, or Uncle Yokishi, or even his own parents. Why specifically her? Come to think of it, AI had never heard Hyde talk about his parents. Hyde, couldn't you spend it on your family too? You're the only family I have though. Hyde had been unfortunate with family in both his past and present lives. In his past life, he was abandoned at age 5 and raised in a facility. In this life it seemed he had a proper home at first, but before he was reincarnated, he had been abandoned by his parents and raised by an uncle, though where that uncle went, he didn't know. Of course, he had luck with people. In his past life, he grew into an adult with the help of mentors who cared for him, and in this life, he met colleagues like Tanaka Shuji and Yokishi. It's exactly as it sounds. Did I not tell you? I was in a similar situation to you, AI. That. AI looked flustered by my response, as if she had asked something she shouldn't have, but I smiled gently and met her purple eyes. Is there any reason to be that flustered? My family is already right here in front of me. While I had no family connected by blood in this life, I had made many whom I could call family. The members of Enfant Terribles were nothing short of brothers, and AI had become the being who allowed me to exist as myself. You might not believe it, but I'm always leaning on you. To the point where I can call you my other half. Hyde spoke while looking directly at AI with blue eyes full of conviction. So, you aren't the only one who loves me. You've seemed anxious ever since we were in the practice room, haven't you? At Hyde's words, AI didn't say a thing, merely nodding with a bright smile as her answer. Seeing her smile, Hyde wore an identical expression and took her small, delicate hand that was resting on the table. In the first place, you're the only woman I meet privately, AI. You're the only person I text or call besides for official business. Is it okay to be like that? Why wouldn't it be? I'm saying you're the only one who can take as much of my precious time as they want, infinitely. Isn't that just because Hyde is too busy? I'm trying to set the mood here, geez. Could you please play along? My dear self-proclaimed ultimate idol. Until the night grew deep and all of Tokyo fell asleep, silencing the city, until even the moon, which had asserted its presence in the faint black sky, hid its trace behind the warm sunlight. The two shared stories they hadn't been able to tell while apart, their conversation blooming like flowers in the dark. Chapter 90, Dating Rumors Aren't As Big a Deal as You'd Think. 1975 words. A day began as peacefully as any other until the famous British tabloid, The Sun, began distributing an extra edition. An extra edition refers to an emergency print issued by a newspaper to break urgent news, usually reserved for historical events. Even for a rag like The Sun, the fact that they issued one meant something massive had occurred. People across the streets began to panic as they saw the articles. It was extremely rare for an entertainment story to warrant an extra edition, but the logo for the entertainment division was proudly stamped at the top of the page. What the? Is it even legal to issue an extra for something this trivial? Tom York, picking up a discarded paper on his way to work, assumed The Sun was just chasing engagement like usual and was about to tear it up. Wait, isn't this Hyde from Enfants Terribles? As he looked closer, he saw a photo of Hyde, the leader of the world-renowned Enfants Terribles, holding hands with an Asian woman. It was certainly something that would grab attention, but Tom thought it hardly deserved an extra edition. Fans of Enfants Terribles cared about their music, not their private lives. While a few groupies might feel differently, most fans just wanted them to stay alive and keep releasing albums instead of dropping dead in the street. Oh. This isn't actually bad at all. In fact, Tom thought Hyde being in a relationship was a good thing. Lately, Hyde had seemed a bit low on energy. If he started a family, wouldn't the newlywed buff and parenting buff help him pump out even more songs? From a fan's perspective, nothing was better than an artist being prolific. Didn't the band's bald bassist churn out the masterpiece OK Computer right after he started dating? Oh, she's a beauty, too. Looks like a celebrity. While he felt a twinge of jealousy that Hyde was rich and dating such a beautiful woman, honestly, as long as Hyde didn't use a Remington to blow his brains out and stop writing music, what the artist did was none of his business. If this woman could inspire Hyde to write more legendary tracks, he'd be willing to lick her boots. Similar to his reaction, the general response in the UK toward the extra edition was lukewarm. A singer just needs to write songs. Who cares? It's not like he committed a crime. Wait, isn't Hyde a minor? Rather than obsessing over the romance, the British public was fuming at The Sun for failing to protect the privacy of a minor, and instead chasing him all the way to his home country of Japan. It had only been 11 years since they lost their beloved princess to the excessive privacy violations of the paparazzi. The British public had not forgotten the tragedy that took the woman they admired, nor had they forgotten The Sun's atrocities committed under the guise of the right to know. Those bastards. This is another form of oppression. Have a Molotov cocktail made of whiskey. Furthermore, because the September movement sparked by Enfants Terribles was in full swing across the UK, the dawn after the extra was published saw The Sun's building scorched black by arson. It's forbidden to forbid. Did you get in touch with The Sun? What? They can't answer the phone because their building is on fire. Saito Ichigo, president of Strawberry Productions, the major label housing both Enfants Terribles and Bikomachi, was losing his mind over the extra issued across the ocean in the UK while he was asleep. If it had been a Japanese media outlet, he could have controlled it through his connections, but there was no stopping an article breaking in England. Damn it, think, Saito Ichigo. Turning crisis into opportunity is your life philosophy. Ignoring his trademark sunglasses sliding down his nose, Saito sat indoors with a cigarette, carefully plotting his next move. But honestly, who could have expected it? A dating scandal between AI and Hyde. Truth be told, he had a hunch. Both AI and Hyde headed toward each other whenever their schedules cleared, and lately, they had even started to resemble one another. He had simply brushed it off, thinking they were just busy, and that lack of foresight had led to this mess. Damn it, if I'd known, I would have prepared. He continued calculating the gains and losses in his head. First, there would be no damage to Enfant Terribles. Their fandom loved them for their raw authenticity and music, not as pseudo-boyfriends. Aside from Hyde, the group didn't exactly have visual appeal anyway. The problem is Bikomachi. The fandom for Bikomachi was different. He was currently in the middle of transitioning their fanatical idol base into an artist-following fandom, as Strawberry Productions gained capital and AI's songwriting matured. Fine, it's a bit early, but I have no choice. Saito decided to accelerate the plan. He had to turn Bikomachi into a long-running group. Being known as the group containing the partner of Enfant Terrible's leader would generate massive noise marketing, so the outlook wasn't entirely negative. After all, hadn't Kichijoji Yuriko, the partner of the band's bald bassist, received explosive global attention after her dating rumor broke? Because our AI is a genuine liar. To Saito, AI was a true star with the charm to convert the spotlight into popularity. While the other members of Bikomachi were excellent, AI, who had learned performance and composition from the members of Enfant Terribles, was on a different level. Still, damn you, Hyde. I'm definitely going to punch you once. The relationship between Saito Ichigo and Hoshino AI wasn't just a business contract. On paper, AI was legally Saito Ichigo's daughter. Not just a daughter on a document, but a real daughter tied by a bond of love. Saito felt an urge to beat Hyde for taking his daughter away from his protective wing. Still, with this incident as a catalyst, Bikomachi might actually hit the Billboard charts. The protagonists of the scandal, Hyde and AI, were enjoying a date in Asakusa, Daitogu, Tokyo, as if none of it mattered. They had already finished discussing the response strategy with President Saito Ichigo. While the fandom was split, more fans were showing a positive reaction than not. Hee, do you think we'll be caught walking like this, holding hands? AI, don't worry about that. I already beat the ones following us half to death this morning, and sent them to the ER. Enfant Terribles was originally famous for hospitalizing paparazzi. While things had been quiet lately because no one dared to follow them, beating paparazzi and sending them to the doctor was part of Hyde's daily routine. Is that allowed? Don't worry. I didn't get a single scratch since I just smashed their car window, dragged them out, and gave them a thrashing. That's kind of a shame. I was planning on giving a peace sign if we got snapped. Hyde smiled at AI's reaction and began to think. Some stars deliberately hired paparazzi to create hype. It satisfied the public's curiosity, and the hired paparazzi would chase away other rivals to protect their exclusive, so it wasn't a bad deal. Should I hire one? There's probably one dedicated paparazzi even Enfant Terribles doesn't know about. Makoto is usually good at handling things like that. Hyde. If you say such a terrifying thing again, I might just kiss you right here in public. Oh, that doesn't sound too bad. Amidst their banter, more and more people began to recognize the gorgeous couple radiating a star's aura. They usually wore masks and hats, but currently, they were walking the streets without any disguise. Since the news was out, they were fully participating in Saito Ichigo's plan to show off their date and maximize the buzz. Ah, hello. This is AI from Bikomachi. They enjoyed their date, waving as if snapping back at the minority of internet keyboard warriors who acted as if dating were a crime. The rage of the keyboard warriors. It would surely be buried without any traction. The massive Enfant Terribles fandom would pour concentrated fire on anyone insulting their star. See? AI, just like I said, it's no big deal, right? Hyde intended to properly wrap up the incident involving the paparazzi. he had failed to spot and subsequently sent to the ER. Enfant Terrible's concerts wouldn't be an issue for now, as they had hired the newcomer, Sakamoto Ryuichi. I'll show you what 2020's style media play looks like. Hyde was about to show the world of 2008 what couple YouTubers were all about. Damn, is this real life? Look at the honey dripping from their eyes. My heart hurts. Damn, now I want to date too. I'm inspired, I'm going to go confess to my girlfriend right now. Now you're gonna be just friends forever, lol. I didn't even know who Bikamachi was, but isn't AI way too cute? They say Hyde was the one who confessed first. I can see why. Their history is even better. They've been together since the band started. At this point, should the guys on the 2CHEF board call her the Holy Mother? Hey, watch your tongue. Show some respect. It's Holy Mother AI-sama. Lol. Apparently, AI is super close with the other members too. Shuji and Yokishi treat her like a younger sister and adore her. Honestly, if you write a hate comment about AI now, I feel like all 3 members of Enfant Terribles will track you down and beat you. Hey you, did you write a hate comment? You want to be folded in half by these muscles. Eek. I'm sorry, big brother. So AI writes songs so well because she learned from Enfant Terribles. I heard she even learned guitar from Hyde. The level of her tutor is insane. I'm a fan of Bikamachi AI. Honestly, if it's Hyde, I can accept this. If it's a super alpha male like Hyde, you have to admit it. Is there anyone else who could make AI happier than Hyde? I actually like it. Even if I feel NTR'd, if it's him, I'll allow it. I would have been mad if it were some nobody, but since it's Hyde, I feel like my own status went up. You crazy bastard, lol. Isn't AI's bare face crazy beautiful too? Fact. I really want to know what skincare she uses. Her skin is glowing. Their height difference is so heart-fluttering. Watching AI-san look up at Hyde-kun. Even though I'm not her, my heart skipped a beat. Hyde-kun looked like he was dying of cuteness, too. Didn't you feel how much he adores her? I wish my boyfriend would treat me like that. Hyde-kun is so expressive with his affection. I'm a man in my 50s just passing by. Leaving a comment because they look like such a lovely couple. I also loved seeing them respect and care for each other. They aren't like kids these days, they meet so gracefully, don't they? They seem like kids with their heads on straight. I think I'll start rooting for them. I recently started dating and your video motivated me, Hyde Hyung. I need to do better for my partner. Post more. I already liked, shared, and subscribed. The reaction to Hyde and AI's YouTube video was explosive, enough to turn what little criticism AI received into chants of Holy Mother AI-sama. The website for reading paid chapters is available on my Patreon. The number of chapters on Patreon, 137. Link, patreon.com/ultramagnus_t. Chapter 91, appearing on AIM Talk. 1. 1983 words. As the internet erupted over the video of Enfant Terrible's leader Hyde and Bikamachi's center AI dating, Hyde was at a broadcasting station preparing for a shoot. Asahi TV's AIM Talk is a popular variety program that gains its popularity by conducting interviews with celebrities in a comfortable, tranquil atmosphere, much like SBS's Healing Camp in Korea, allowing guests to naturally open up about their inner feelings. Ah, Hyde-san, your microphone is crooked. And Hyde, the leader of Enfant Terribles, was scheduled to appear as a guest on that very AIM Talk. From the perspective of Asahi TV, which had been suffering from recent slumps in viewership ratings, Hyde's appearance was like rain during a drought. Although there had been another guest originally slated for the slot, as soon as Hyde expressed his intent to appear on AIM Talk, Asahi TV immediately pushed for the recording by arranging a schedule that involved shooting twice a week. Asahi TV was staking everything on this shoot. Was it not the Hyde making a solo appearance on a variety show? While he had appeared on shows with Enfant Terribles before, this was the first time Hyde was appearing on variety television alone. All right. We're going to roll. Stand by, cue. A tense staff member set Hyde's microphone and gave the cue signal, and the MCs, whose expressions had been stiff just moments ago, began to flash professional smiles. All right. Hotohara-san. What is the reason we've gathered in such a hurry today? Wasn't it because someone who is currently the ultimate trend decided to come see us? Hotohara Toru and Miyasako Hiroyuki, who serve as the MCs for AIM Talk, began their banter, and the rigid atmosphere of the set began to relax. Yes. That's right. If you live in Japan, there is no way you don't know this person. I honestly never imagined he would appear on our program. I agree. He is known as the greatest genius Japan has ever produced. I knew he was busy with overseas activities, so when I heard he was coming here, I was absolutely shocked. All right. Then, let us introduce today's guest. It's the leader and frontman of Enfant Terribles, Hyde-san. As the comedy duo act between Hotohara Toru and Miyasako Hiroyuki concluded, the cameras that had been focused on them turned in perfect unison toward a handsome young man with blonde hair. The camera then captured the image of the blonde youth holding a guitar and clearing his throat. Once the rapid camera movements settled, Hyde began to sing Enfant Terribles' representative track, Live Forever. A song embodying the band's optimism, Live Forever held immense significance in music history for its role in sparking the band's syndrome. The reason Hyde chose this as the opening song was that singing Live Forever allowed him to reclaim, even if only slightly, the emotions of those days, a time when he sang with sincerity and shouted a positivity fueled by self-assurance. For this recording, Hyde intended to return to a teenage sensibility and explain his relationship with AI to the public. After all, wasn't the pure and fresh love of teenagers, uncolored by society, a subject that everyone raves about regardless of generation? Hyde planned to exploit that public romanticism. Wow! I see why they call you a superstar. It's a pleasure to meet you, superstar Hyde-san. Ah yes. It's a pleasure to meet you both as well. Following Hotohara Toru's greeting, Miyasako Hiroyuki jumped right in to offer his own. You really are a fantastic singer. I feel this every time I listen to your music, but your voice truly has soul. Can you see the goosebumps on my arm right here? Ah, well. Hyde felt bashful at the praise from the two men. While he had seen plenty of compliments in articles, it was his first time hearing such praise from others right to his face. For Hyde, who possessed a naturally blunt temperament, it was an environment difficult to adjust to immediately. I suppose I am doing quite well, aren't I? However, unlike in the past, Hyde was now a pro who could hide his sincerity. All right. We'll stop talking about your career for now. Hyde-san, is there a specific reason you came on AIM Talk today? Hyde's ultimate goal in appearing on the show was to manage public opinion regarding his relationship with AI, ensuring that even the smallest negative views were silenced so she wouldn't be hurt. Was there not a bit of a commotion recently regarding my dating life? Ah. That's right. You were involved in a massive scandal with Bikomachi's AI-chan. It broke because of that photo taken at a table in front of a convenience store. Miyasako Hiroyuki mentioned the photo included in the articles to help viewers who might not know the details of the scandal. Of course, while almost every Japanese person likely knew, it is important in broadcasting to explain everything as if showing it to someone who knows nothing at all. Yes. I enjoyed a date for the first time in a long while, and it turned into a scandal. What were your thoughts at that moment? First, I thought I had let my guard down. Since quite a few paparazzi have ended up with their lights punched out by my hands, there haven't been many around lately. Honestly, I never imagined a reporter from The Sun would follow me all the way to Japan. Enfant Terribles certainly is famous for sending reporters to the emergency room. If that reporter had caught a hook to the jaw from Hyde-san, he might have come to his senses and lived right. How tragic. Hyde gave a faint smile, as if agreeing with Hodo Haratoru's ad-lib. Anyway, since I've never really talked about my private life to the public, all sorts of rumors started circulating. But I saw some rumors that might hurt AI, so I came out to speak frankly. I only want AI to see the good things in life. If bad rumors are spreading, doesn't that mean there are stories that might hurt you as well, Hyde-san? Well, I suppose so. Since I'm only human, hearing those things does weigh on me. Saying it weighed on him was a roundabout way of saying he was being hurt. Hearing that he was pained by the public's reaction, Hodo Haratoru and Miyasako Hiroyuki began to look at Hyde with pity. No matter how much of a superstar he was, Hyde and AI were still minors. Being placed in such a situation at an age when they should have the right to freely express themselves and enjoy happiness, Hodo Haratoru and Miyasako Hiroyuki couldn't help but feel sympathy as adults. Ah. I see. Even if the whole world criticizes you, we will cheer for the love between Hyde-san and AI-chan. Speaking as an adult, Hyde-san and AI-chan are at an age where you are allowed to love freely. Which means, if someone has something to say about it, you have every right to hold up a middle finger and tell them to eat s*******. All right. Before we hear more about your love life, shall we take some time to learn about Hyde the human, rather than Hyde the leader of Enfant Terribles? As you know from watching our program, we start by listening to stories from very early childhood. Even for a superstar like Hyde-san, there are no exceptions. Hodo Hara-san. That's why I brought them. Hyde-san's school records and report cards. Hodo Haratoru brought out a rolling whiteboard and began pinning Hyde's school records and grades to it. As they looked over the grades, the eyes of the three MCs filled with astonishment. Wow, except for music and literature, your grades are basically scraping the bottom. I guess you had no interest in studying back then. At Hodo Haratoru's comment, Miyasako Hiroyuki, who had belatedly checked the report card, let out an exclamation of a different kind. At least I did well in literature and music. My ability to utilize my given talents was simply better than my ability to study. To be honest, Hyde didn't know much about his actions before he had reincarnated into this body. They surfaced in his dreams like fragments, giving him the general context, but he didn't know the specifics. Honestly, it's getting harder to distinguish between my past life and this one now. When he first took over the body, his past life experiences and current ones were clearly separated, but now the boundaries were becoming very blurred. That's certainly true. Then shall we take a look at the life records? Oh, it's written here. He was an active and cheerful child until the age of 9, but he seems to require psychological counseling due to the deep scars left by his parents' divorce. Ah, this was something that had recently surfaced in his dreams. Because the frequency of memories from before his reincarnation appearing had increased lately, I had already absorbed a significant amount of those memories. Ah, having your family fall apart is never a pleasant experience. Actually, what was more shocking than that was seeing my father, who said he would never remarry, get remarried anyway. Well, I was kicked out after expressing my resentment toward him. As I finished speaking, the MCs of AIM Talk looked at me with pitying eyes. Of course, because I felt the emotions of that time, I couldn't say I was completely indifferent. However, because the memories of growing up while meeting good adults in my previous life were so vivid, I could honestly brush off the events of that time as just something that happened. It seems you faced many hardships after that. There's a note here. After bouncing between his aunts, uncles, and grandparents' houses, he eventually went to his mother but was neglected by her as well. Seeing him living like a ghost at his paternal uncle's house makes me feel pity not just as a teacher, but as an adult. This was a fact I hadn't known. I remembered being abused at my uncle's house, but the fact that I had been rejected by other family members and drifted from place to place was a memory that had never surfaced before. Ah, how did you endure that pain? What was there to endure? I just held on by listening to old music. Artists like Chuck Berry. They say musicians grow by swallowing pain. I didn't know Hyde-san had such a background. Every time memories from before the reincarnation surfaced, I thought about how many similarities there were to my past life. In my previous life, I had been abandoned by my parents and overcome that pain through music, and it was the same for me in this life. Ah. Do you have something like a first love from your school days? To lighten the darkening atmosphere, Mayasako Hiroyuki tossed out a question to change the mood. Ah, well. It was a bit sorry to AI, but my first love was in my past life. However, since AI was definitely the first love of this life, the words I was about to speak wouldn't be a lie. My first love is currently a work in progress. Ah, yes. I see. We should ask about that story a bit later, so let's save that for in a moment. Then, the expressions of Hotohara Toru and Mayasako Hiroyuki, who were still looking through the school records, began to stiffen. Their hands trembled as if they had seen something they shouldn't have. This is a very disrespectful question, but on the way to school, the uncle who was raising you hung. Him. I'm sorry. Shall we skip this topic? After that question, the filming for AIM Talk was temporarily suspended. For the first time in AIM Talk history, a situation had arisen where the entire personal history segment might need to be cut from the broadcast. Chapter 92, appearing on AIM Talk. 2. 2,156 words. Recommended song, Last Night on Earth by Green Day. Is something wrong? I heard you were suddenly stopping the shoot. Hotohara Toru and Mayasako Hiroyuki were hesitating on how to respond to Hyde, who had approached them asking why filming had been halted amidst the confused atmosphere. We won't ask about your personal life anymore. Even if we do, we'll avoid the sensitive parts. We believe that's the proper courtesy to show you, Hyde-san. What? And if you don't mind, could we use the footage we shot earlier? Hyde couldn't quite understand why Hotohara and Mayasako were walking on eggshells, asking permission to air what had already been filmed. That's why we're filming, isn't it? Use it however you like. Even as the cameras were set to roll again, Hyde remained perplexed by the staff members who continued to cast cautious glances his way. The filming of AIM Talk resumed, though the once light-hearted atmosphere of the set now carried a noticeable weight. Do you ever find yourself missing your parents? Even in my past life, I had no parents. I grew up in an institution until I finished elementary school. I could have stayed until I was 18, but I left in my first year of middle school because I was taken in by the guitar teacher I had been pestering to teach me. He was too young to be a father, so I called him Hyung or brother. If anyone, I missed him. I didn't miss my biological parents. No matter how powerful the bonds of blood are said to be, to me, those people were strangers. I don't miss them. I have another family now. Another family. The members of Enfants Terribles and AI. If my family in my previous life was that brother, then my family in this life consisted of the band and AI. Isn't a family defined by those who are always on your side when things get hard? Despite the many truths I can never speak of, AI and my bandmates were, without a doubt, my family. Oh? Looking at your middle school records, it seems you barely attended classes back then. I was a drifter back then. I'd wander off to look at the ocean by myself, sleep in the mountains. I think I just did a bit of everything. Was there a reason you wandered like that? I think the me of this life wanted to find a reason to live. To be precise, I think I was wandering to find someone similar to myself. Though of course, all I found were low-tier eccentrics just pretending to be twisted. I think I was searching for the meaning of life. And a place where I belonged. For some reason, the uncle who was raising me vanished, and I didn't have anywhere else to go. Ah, and did you find your answer? Unfortunately, I don't think I found it back then. Truthfully, that was where my memories ended. I don't know if the me from that time ever found the answer. I get the feeling that I had been frustrated with the world and had decided to seek some kind of nirvana, but since that me and the current me are different entities, I can't be sure. Then that implies you've found it now. I've found it now. Living peacefully beside the person I love, that is the purpose and meaning of my life. Oh. Are you proposing to AI-chan indirectly right now? Well, let's just say that's the case. Now that we were lovers, I had absolutely no intention of losing AI to some other punk. Since our relationship had come this far, the ending was already set in stone. I'd have to ask for AI's opinion first, but if I'm going to start a family, I think it would be nice to have a son and a daughter. Having never known a proper home, my desire for a happy family was immense. I am confident that I will become the ultimate devoted husband and doting father, more than anyone else. In that case, shall we move on to the stories after you graduated middle school? From this point on, the questions touched upon the memories I had built in this world, the ones that truly defined me. The memories of the struggle to form a band in a world without rock, eventually conquering the Billboard charts. Memories that were uniquely mine. I love instruments. Especially the guitar. But I realized people didn't know the beauty of a guitar's sound. So I just grabbed a guitar and went out to play on the streets. So that was the birth of Hyde the musician. Yes, exactly. When people started coming out near the universities, I'd go in front of closed shops, parks, or back alleys to play the guitar and sing. There are probably records of it still on the internet. People dating while holding hands, others having a drink with my music as a side dish. I have many fun memories from then. Financially, it was much harder than it is now, but a smile touched my lips as I recalled those days when I stood on the streets with nothing but a guitar. The days when I played freely for just a few people and received their applause. Those must be very happy memories for you. Your expression was quite stiff until a moment ago, but seeing you brighten up like this makes even me feel how overwhelming those emotions must have been. It was also around that time that I met AI. So you met her long before Enfant Terribles was even formed. Yes, that's right. In truth, very little had been revealed to the public about AI and the band. This was because all the members of Enfant Terribles, wary that their bad boy image might negatively impact Bikomachi, had refrained from speaking in detail. Well then. Shall we talk about your romance? What was your first impression? She was a brat who looked incredibly lonely. Honestly, I was struggling just to keep myself afloat at first, so I tried to ignore her, but I found that I just couldn't. When I first saw AI, she was a girl desperately trying to hide her emotions behind a mask. A kid trying to act tough, pretending to be bright to conceal her inner void. That was the AI I first met. Surely her looks played a part too. AI is certainly beautiful. She has a face that would definitely make a name for itself in Hollywood. But it wasn't for that reason. I just suddenly had the thought that if I didn't help that girl who looked so much like me, she would live her entire life in loneliness before just fading away. According to the article in The Sun, AI-chan's family history wasn't exactly bright either. Perhaps you instinctively recognized the same pain, having gone through a similarly bleak childhood. The reason people had been so enraged by The Sun was that they hadn't just reported on the dating rumors, they had gone as far as digging up and exposing AI's private family history as they pleased. Maybe that was it. Back then, my only thought was that I had to fill that void within her. And that somehow turned into love. I'd call it fate rather than somehow. It started as a relationship meant to fill her void, but in the end, I was the one receiving comfort from her. As I answered the questions, I visualized the scene of AI and me bickering while sitting in front of a convenience store. Me buying her Häagen-Dazs with trembling hands, and her teasing me while secretly sharing that same ice cream with me. So rather than falling in love at first sight, you fell deeper and deeper as time went on. Yes, that's right. And I have no intention of ever pulling myself out of it. At my words, the female staff members observing from the side of the set began to blush, pressing their hands to their cheeks, as if they were the ones receiving a confession. Hyde-san, your casual flirting skills are incredible. Hey. Staff. Get fluttered by my comments too. Hotohara-san, your face compared to Hyde-kun's. The heavy atmosphere that had filled the studio during the interview about Hyde's past shifted back to its original warmth, as the topic turned fully toward his lover, AI. By the way, who confessed first? That was a bit of a gray area. AI was the first to show her feelings as a woman, but I was the one who suggested we become a couple. I did. Oh. Can you tell us the words you used? As the MC finished speaking, everyone on set began to look at me with eyes full of anticipation. But there really wasn't much to it. It was just a plain line that anyone would use. Hoshino AI, please go out with me. It was just something like that. The moment the words left my mouth, squeals and cheers erupted from the staff. Ooh. So did AI-chan accept immediately? Yes, she did. How did you feel in that moment? Truthfully, it's a bit fuzzy now, but I was stunned and felt damn good. Good enough that I wrote a song the very next day. Last Night on Earth, a song I wrote the day after we started dating, inspired by a dream, was an absolute masterpiece. Has that song been released? Unfortunately, it's only in my head. Has AI-chan heard it? Ah. I haven't played it for her yet. We've both been so busy since then that I think I just missed the opportunity. Then let's hear it during the ending stage. I felt a bit like I was being baited, but since I had to play it for AI anyway, it wasn't a bad suggestion. What specifically do you love about AI-chan? I'm just happy when I'm with her. She's the only one who makes me feel like I can truly exist as myself. I tend to overthink things, but when I'm with AI, it feels like all my problems just resolve themselves. Wow. This guy is really far gone. Look at him. This man is completely whipped. Just talking about her, and his eyes are dripping with honey. As I answered the questions, the two MCs teased me with indulgent grins. Then what do you do while you're on tour? Seeing how you are now, it looks like you'd be dying to see her. We call and text a lot. You can assume I'm constantly texting her whenever I'm in the hotel. Man. Just get married. Get married already. Upon hearing about my life in the hotel rooms, details previously unknown to the public, the two MCs grabbed my shoulders and shouted with genuine sincerity for us to get married. By the way, does AI-chan get jealous? Judging by the way you act, it doesn't seem like she would. Ah, she does. Of course, I try my absolute best not to give her any reason to, but I'm not very good at understanding a woman's heart. Then how does AI-chan show her jealousy? Actually, it shows on her face immediately. She gets this pouty expression. And whenever she's jealous, she always crosses her arms. Hyde broke into a gentle smile as he answered the MCs, vividly picturing AI's jealous state in his mind. How do you feel when AI-chan is jealous? She's cute. And it feels damn good. Laughter erupted throughout the studio at my reaction. Wait, why? Isn't that normal? All right then. Could you give us a little taste of the song you wrote with AI-chan in mind? They do say that a composer's sincerity is poured into their music. At that, the PD quickly brought over the guitar that had been set aside. Normally, I would have firmly declined, but perhaps because of the atmosphere, or because the topic was the person I loved, I couldn't say no. Last Night on Earth was a song that organized the emotions I felt after my feelings for AI were fully solidified during our trip to the hot springs. To put it simply, it was a love song. As the song continued, everyone in the studio wore happy, indulgent smiles, perhaps because of the melody, or perhaps because the lyrics made them reminisce about their own youthful loves. After the song, the heavy air never returned to the set. Even though it was a television recording, everyone there resonated with the guest's story with pure sincerity. Even in the entertainment industry, a world built on cold business and calculation, they couldn't help but respond with their hearts to the story of two teenagers dreaming of a future together after finding their life partners. The website for reading paid chapters is available on my Patreon. The number of chapters on Patreon, 137. Link, patreon.com/ultramagnus_t. Chapter 93, Side Story, an ominous fan signing event. 871 words. Preparing for their comeback in December, Bikomachi was leading an incredibly busy life due to album production. There had been a moment where a dating rumor between Hyde, the leader of Enfant Terribles, and AI, the center of Bikomachi, was leaked by paparazzi. However, this actually acted as a godsend, providing a promotional effect that boosted Bikomachi's recognition. Consequently, demand for the group skyrocketed. Damn idols. It's okay. You can all do great. What? Their hectic routine also included fan signing events. The purpose of this specific fan signing was to calm public opinion among fans confused by the dating rumors, and to prevent the fandom from churning due to the gap in active promotions. Normally, for an idol group, maintaining the size of the fandom is critical. Unless a catfish with the public recognition and musicality of Enfant Terribles enters the market, music chart rankings are typically determined by the sheer size of the fandom. This is because collective fandom actions, often called organized streaming drives, exert a massive influence on chart positions. Yup. Just trust in AI. Bikomachi members Mimi and Nino looked at their center, AI, who was responding with such confidence despite the chaotic situation. However, regardless of her confident answer, AI's legs were trembling. Noticing her honest reaction, Mimi and Nino gave her warm smiles and grabbed her shoulders. AI. You're not the only one in Bikomachi. Good grief. Our youngest is so cute. It's way too obvious you're just acting tough, AI. The other members also chuckled as they saw AI's legs shaking, a stark contrast to her bold declaration. When Bikomachi first started, the members felt envy and jealousy toward AI for hogging all of Strawberry Productions' attention. But as the agency got onto its feet, and the members began receiving equal treatment, their skills as idols improved as well. This allowed them to notice and eventually embrace AI's underlying loneliness. And now, after realizing that AI had always treated them with true sincerity, they were doubling their efforts so that the youngest member of Bikomachi could finally lean on them. They knew now. They knew that the ultimate idol, who was always so dignified and looked up to by everyone, was actually just an ordinary girl who felt nervous, made mistakes, occasionally fell into despair, and shed tears, just like them. All right. Bikomachi, fighting. Celebrating the comeback. Bikomachi fan signing event held. Ha. Bikomachi's center, AI, chugged from a water bottle, her face uncharacteristically stiff with nerves. Though she had shown her face on YouTube since the dating rumor broke, this was her first time standing in a public setting. Furthermore, as many as 300,000 people had attempted to buy tickets to attend the fan signing of the group involved in the scandal. The sheer digital firepower was so intense that Strawberry Productions' website was shut down due to a massive traffic overload. AI, aren't you drinking too much water? Are you okay? Of course. AI doesn't get nervous over things like this. Usually, AI felt no anxiety at all when standing before her fans for a performance, but the situation was different this time. Even if things had improved since she met Hyde, she was still a coward at heart, and she feared that the fans might lash out at her like a certain subset of netizens had. Okay. Bikomachi, please enter now. AI let out a breath heavy with tension and followed the staff toward the stage where the fans were waiting. As the security guards and staff opened the iron gate, the only gateway to the stage, nearly 3,000 people began to cheer wildly for Bikomachi. Bikomachi is so pretty. The princess's visuals are insane. Though she felt a dark premonition about this fan signing even before it started, AI acted like a professional, suppressing that feeling with a smile and a wave. Next is our lead story. Around 8 p.m. today, Hoshino AI, a member of the idol group Bikomachi under Strawberry Productions, was injured by a box cutter hidden inside a gift box while she was opening presents from fans. According to the announcement from Strawberry Productions, the box cutter was uniquely modified, resulting in a 6 cm laceration on her palm. She suffered an arterial injury and significant blood loss, but thanks to emergency first aid provided by the fellow Bikomachi members at the scene, she was moved out of critical danger and is currently resting. In fact, according to Tokyo Tanakawa Hospital where AI is recuperating, the situation could have been fatal due to the arterial damage, but the bleeding was stopped in time. Further detailed examinations have confirmed that there was no nerve damage caused by the wound. The perpetrator was identified as a 21-year-old college student, Mr. M, who has a history of mental illness. He was caught on CCTV footage submitting the gift, and detectives from the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department executed an emergency arrest upon confirmation. Meanwhile, the victim's agency, Strawberry Productions, has stated that there will be no settlement regarding this incident. They expressed their firm stance to ensure the perpetrator receives a punishment befitting the crime to prevent such horrific events from ever occurring again. Chapter 94, The World's Most Uncool Proposal. 1090 words. It happened just as Hyde, the leader of Enfant Terribles, was heading to the parking lot to pick up his lover after her fan signing event, following his own recording of AIM Talk. She had complained so much about being worried to appear in public for the first time since their dating rumors broke, but Hyde had been confident she would handle it well. He was just about to mount his bike when it happened. Wait a second. Hyde-kun, an AIM Talk staff member, whom he had just seen on set, grabbed him with a face that looked like it was holding back tears and began pulling him somewhere. What is it? Was there a problem with the recording? But when he arrived at the spot the staff member led him to, he saw something unbelievable. To be precise, it was something he could never have imagined, something that should never have happened, flashing across the TV in the broadcasting station lounge as a breaking news report. What the hell am I looking at? Reading the text on the screen labeled Breaking News, he felt his mind go blank. It felt as if his heart had dropped into a bottomless abyss, as if half of his body was being ripped away. The colorful world turned to monochrome. The surrounding noise and even the sound of his own heartbeat faded into silence. Only then could he finally read the words on the screen. Breaking news: Bikomachi's AI in critical condition after terrorist attack. Exclusive: Bikomachi's AI currently being transported to Tokyo Tanakawa Hospital following excessive blood loss. Emergency alert: Hoshino AI of Strawberry Productions in critical condition due to aortic bleeding. What the hell is this bullshit? Stop joking around. Despite his words, the handsome blonde youth was already sprinting toward his motorcycle in the parking lot, his breath coming in ragged bursts, as if all the air had been vacuumed out of his lungs. The moment he swung onto the bike, Hyde didn't even stop to steady his breathing. He kicked it into fifth gear and twisted the throttle to its limit, surging forward. Vroom. As he rode, he caught glimpses of the attack scene on city electronic billboards. It was gruesome. The sight of her opening a gift from a fan, only to be deeply cut, clutching her wrist and collapsing, forced the worst possible outcome to the forefront of his mind. Oh my. How could that happen? She's done for. With that much blood. Various voices drifted toward him as he tore through the city, but Hyde didn't falter. He pushed the motorcycle to its absolute top speed, racing toward Tanakawa Hospital. Move. Ignoring lane lines, Hyde weaved through traffic at 200 kilometers per hour, heading toward the place where his beloved had been taken. In all his life, Hyde had never truly resented the world. But right now, he was pouring out all his bitterness toward existence. This godforsaken world always took the people most precious to him. The older brother who had taken him in had died in a construction site accident, and the lover who had sustained him after that had died of an illness. Screech. However, despite his desperate urgency, he couldn't drive all the way to the emergency room. Vehicles covered in broadcasting station logos were clogging the entrance, making it impossible to get inside. Hyde jumped off the bike and began to sprint toward the ER entrance. Hyde-san. How are you feeling right now? Feelings my ass. Get the fuck out of my way. Reporters tried to block his path, but they were unceremoniously flattened onto the pavement by fists carrying Hyde's full body weight. Nothing could stop Hyde's charge until he found AI. Wow. You were really lucky, AI-san. If this had gone just a bit more to the side, it would have hit the nerve. I'm glad it missed. Hee hee. Is that so? Then I was super lucky. The first thing I saw when I reached the emergency room was AI, her wound already stitched up, talking to a man who appeared to be her doctor. I stared at the scene for a long moment before I began to walk toward her, as if I were under a spell. Oh. Hyde, how? I'm so glad you're safe. Truly. I pulled her into a hug right in front of the doctor. As she looked at me, AI's eyes were filled more with concern for me than for herself, the victim of a terrorist attack. Hyde, are you okay? The violet-haired girl stroked her weeping lover's hair, her voice thick with worry. But for once, Hyde couldn't understand his partner. Even at a time like this, she put her lover's heart before her own well-being. To him, she was the one who needed to be looked after. Weren't you scared? If I said I wasn't, that would be a lie, right? But I can't exactly start being afraid of my fans. AI expressed her feelings as calmly as possible, but her response only made me grit my teeth tighter. To be honest, I had been careless. I thought the massive Enfant Terribles fandom would suppress negative opinions about our relationship. I thought that by building a positive image through YouTube and major TV appearances, everything would be fine. But that wasn't it. Like a single domino falling and triggering a chain reaction that knocks them all down, the waves caused by our dating rumor were larger and more cruel than I had ever imagined. There's no guarantee an incident like this won't happen again. We got lucky this time because of a quick response, but assuming we'd always be that lucky when a similar situation occurred would be incredibly naive. Therefore, I decided to wield the status I possessed as the leader of Enfant Terribles, something I hadn't used for personal gain once in this life. In my memory, Japan was a country where marriage was possible at the age of 16. Then there was only one answer. As soon as AI's birthday passed in 2009, we would file a marriage registration. The weight of a wife was entirely different from that of a lover. Once we were legally a married couple, no one would be able to touch her. Let's get married. The most uncool proposal in the world was thus made in Tanakawa Hospital by a mentally shattered Hyde. The website for reading paid chapters is available on my Patreon. The number of chapters on Patreon, 137. Link, patreon.com/ultramagnus_t. Chapter 95, Side Story, Second Proposal. 837 words. It was an October morning, and the breeze had finally begun to turn chilly. Across Japan, the press and broadcasting stations began churning out articles filled with sympathy and regret for AI and Hyde, the leader of Enfant Terribles. Even though they were public figures, the media was now lecturing the public, questioning whether the romance between Hyde and AI, both minors, was truly an immoral act deserving of such a terrorist attack. Let's get married. This shift in sentiment was accompanied by a leaked video from hospital staff showing the blonde young man's clumsy, unpolished proposal. The sight of him, having rushed to the hospital in a disheveled state upon hearing his lover was in critical condition, confessing his sincerity was enough to send a wave of deep emotion through the hearts of the public. Hyde. Yeah. Is that proposal for real? Because the bleeding had been significant due to an arterial wound, AI was currently lying in her hospital bed, staring quietly at the television. AI wanted to escape the loop of Hyde's proposal scene that kept repeating infinitely. Even when she switched the channel, every station was running special features on her and Hyde's story. No matter where she turned, she could not escape his proposal. Yeah, it's for real. I spoke while interlacing my fingers with AI's as she fidgeted in my hand. Looking into those starry eyes that always shone so brilliantly, I spoke with all the sincerity I could muster. I want to start a family with you. Experiencing that attack had taught me a bitter, bone-deep lesson. I realized I had to love with everything I had, so that if I were ever separated from those dear to me, I wouldn't have any regrets. Initially, the idea of marriage was something I considered primarily to protect AI's safety, but that was no longer the case. Hyde caressed AI's cold, soft cheek, his smile filled with pure sincerity. So Hyde got scared that AI might just disappear into thin air after getting hurt. Is that why you felt you had to propose to me? Something like that. AI's intuition was remarkably accurate. Since witnessing the attack, I had been gripped by the fear that the things I had taken for granted might suddenly cease to exist. That fear was precisely what led me to make up my mind about marriage. Yeah, that's exactly it. So, will you marry me? Upon hearing my sincerity, AI looked surprised yet happy, staring intently at me for a long time. If an answer doesn't come to mind, you can choose from yes, no, or could you please get out of my life? Then I'll go with yes. AI didn't want anyone other than Hyde, anyway. Though she had possessed a vague certainty that it would happen someday, AI had never imagined she would be promising her hand to Hyde so soon. It was a dream that the once lonely girl had nurtured her entire life. For a cowardly girl who was only just beginning to learn what love was, predicting that the dream of forming a loving family could be realized so easily and so quickly had been an impossible task. From now on, I'm. Hearing AI's answer, Hyde kissed the girl on the bed deeply. Then, utilizing the robust muscles he had built up while traveling with the muscular mixed-race drummer, he scooped AI up and began to spin her around. I'm Hoshino, AI's husband. In the private room of Tanaka Hospital, with no one else around, Hyde's electrified shout echoed loudly for quite some time. But Hyde, I don't think I'm legally old enough yet. Can we actually get married? Now. You, the high school student in the black clothes. What do you think about these dating rumors? While Hyde's second proposal was taking place, citizen interviews were being broadcast on the news. General public opinion regarding the dating scandal was favorable toward Hyde and AI. Although a tiny minority of fans, who supported their star through the lens of a pseudo-romantic relationship, were venting their rage in the dark corners of the internet, their numbers were negligible. The majority of fans sent their support for the story of two young minors nurturing a beautiful love, the kind of story that would make any adult beam with a fatherly or motherly smile. Well, I was a huge fan of AI. Her personality was my ideal type. I've got her picture in my wallet right now, and I used to scrimp and save my allowance just to go to her handshake events. You really must have been a devoted fan. In that case, what are your thoughts on this situation? Well, it's a total shock. But if AI is happy, it's totally okay with me. In contrast to the obsessive and twisted attitude of the psychopath who had attacked AI, this high schooler's model attitude of a true fan delivered with a bright smile and a thumbs up to the camera became a massive talking point across Japan. Chapter 96, B. 983 words. Uticon, a music program on NHK, one of Japan's major broadcasting stations, had a chronic problem with its audio quality. Because it was a world essentially devoid of real bands, lip-syncing was the standard. More importantly, equipping a studio with high-end audio gear required a massive investment. Who would pour a fortune into facilities that weren't even going to be used? In that sense, even Uticon, despite its reputation as Japan's premier music show, lacked proper sound equipment. However, as Enfant Terribles emerged and raised the public's standards for sound, Uticon began to face heavy criticism for its audible footsteps, frantic camera movements, and its muddy, low-quality audio. The backlash had been relentless since Enfant Terribles first appeared on the scene. Now, with the band scheduled to appear again, the Uticon audience was, as always, expecting the same poor sound quality that usually defied expectations in all the wrong ways. Wait, what? This feels different. As a rookie idol from a small agency took the stage for the opening act, a crisp, clean sound began to flow out alongside a flamboyant laser light show. The audience couldn't hide their shock at the jump in quality compared to the abysmal sound from just last week. Is this really the same Uticon? Why is the sound so clean? The reason was simple, Udacon's audio standards had undergone a complete metamorphosis in just 1 week. This was largely thanks to the fact that Enfant Terribles was participating, and the efforts of Udacon's newly appointed PD. The new Udacon PD stood with his arms crossed, watching the fans cheer for the improved acoustics. "If the sound sucks, we aren't coming." He recalled the bold facts Enfant Terribles had sent over as part of their list of requirements. "Yeah, you little shits. I prepared thoroughly. I threw a ridiculous amount of money at it." To prevent a potential riot from Enfant Terribles, who were known to cause a scene if the audio was poor, the new PD had completely overhauled Udacon's sound, which had previously been ranked among the worst in the Japanese archipelago. Thanks to those efforts, Udacon's current audio quality was high even by international standards. "If you guys still complain after this, you're really crossing the line." Just as the PD was enjoying the audience's reaction while watching the stage, a junior staffer came rushing over frantically. "PD, I think we need to change the cue sheet." "Why?" "It's already finalized." "Well, Apex says if they don't get the ending slot, they're going to bail on the show." Apex was a major agency that had been driven into a corner after being caught sabotaging others during the ASEAN semifinals. They were barely holding on through their accumulated capital and the power of their existing stars, but the company faced potential collapse if they couldn't produce a new generation of hits. Of course, they had backing that would likely prevent a total bankruptcy, but with breach of contract fees and other issues, their situation was dire. "They're as consistent as ever, I see." The Udacon PD let out a sigh. He wasn't surprised. It was common practice in the industry for large agencies to throw tantrums to secure the ending slot on music shows. However, no major agency had actually boycotted before. While the ending slot was important, it wasn't worth making an enemy of a broadcasting station, and the stations usually catered to the major agencies anyway. But they're desperate enough that I think they'll actually bail." Apex was cornered. That was why they were putting everything into pushing their new artist, Zard, to the top, utilizing their remaining status as a major player and their connections in the industry. Normally, he might have handed the ending to Apex, but the PD was thinking of Enfant Terribles. "Tell them to leave if they want." Incidentally, the original owner of the ending slot Apex was demanding was Enfant Terribles. To the Udacon PD, it was much better to have Apex flake out than to deal with the band starting a riot. "What? But it's Apex. It's better than having Enfant Terribles trash the place, isn't it?" November is a busy month in the entertainment industry. It's the time when groups preparing for a comeback start increasing their public appearances and dropping hints to drive their fandoms into a frenzy. Next up is a group that has been receiving a lot of attention lately. Please welcome Bikomachi. Bikomachi, the 7-member girl group from Strawberry Productions, appeared amidst a cloud of pink smoke. "Your idol, your sign is B. Chew." As the smoke cleared, the MR for Bikomachi's signature song, Sign Wa B, began to play. The song feels a bit different. The Bikomachi fans in the venue began to show surprised expressions at the altered atmosphere of the track. If the original Sign Wa B felt like a somewhat dated song carried by the sheer star power of AI, the version playing now felt rearranged to highlight the individuality of all the Bikomachi members. Alongside the sound of psychedelic synthesizers came the sharp clack of castanets. As the bright melody kicked into full gear, the catchy sound tickled the ears of the audience. The old-fashioned sound had been replaced with something sophisticated, yet it didn't lose Bikomachi's original selling points. Furthermore, the point choreography, added by Hyde, who had lived in the capital of K-pop in his past life, made the charms of every member stand out even more. Bikomachi was showing off a sensational new move that would soon be known as the Kukkukai Need Dance, thrusting their fists toward the floor while swaying their hips. The well-crafted choreography, the dance, and the melody were all harmonizing on stage like top-tier K-pop idols from a past life. Woeya. Bikomachi. 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 The audience roared with cheers for Bikomachi, who had just delivered the absolute pinnacle of what an idol stage could be. Chapter 97, Life Doesn't Always Go as Planned. 1,111 words. While groups from other labels were taking the stage, the audience still hadn't managed to pull themselves away from the afterglow of Bikomachi's performance. Bikomachi was freaking insane. They definitely have charm. That dance where they hit the floor was mind-blowing. The vast majority of the male audience had fallen for Bikomachi's charms, and even those who hadn't were marveling at the song's production quality and the stage composition. Groups like AKB48 and Shiritsu Ebisu Chugaku received cheers for releasing new songs, but even so, they couldn't overcome the stronghold of Bikomachi's Sign is B stage, even though the song had been out for quite a while. Shiritsu Ebisu Chugaku consisted of middle schoolers who had just begun their agency training, so while they had a refreshing appeal, they lacked the charisma to truly seize the crowd. AKB48, unlike their early days on Asayan, performed like the veterans they were after countless stages, but they were outclassed by Bikomachi in terms of stage design and track quality. In any case, Bikomachi, having delivered a top-tier performance that felt like a direct upgrade to the rest, deeply engraved their name into the minds of everyone watching Uticon. And now, Uticon was moving toward its second half. Normally, Uticon was a one-hour broadcast like many other shows, but today, it was scheduled to feature Enfant Terribles, the band making a name for themselves across the entire world. Wait, why is Enfant Terribles in Japan right now anyway? I heard they came back because that girl from Bikomachi got attacked. Ordinarily, Enfant Terribles should have been on a promotion tour in the United States, but they had temporarily returned to Japan upon hearing that their precious AI had been targeted in a terrorist-like attack. Finally, Part 2 is starting. According to the cue sheet, Part 2 is the real highlight. And so Uticon transitioned into the Part 2 broadcast. In truth, today's highlight for Uticon was indeed Part 2. This was because, led by Enfant Terribles, acts that had achieved success on the Billboard charts like AAA, KATTUN, and TM Network were slated to appear. With the flagship groups of major agencies all appearing at once, today's Part 2 of Uticon was no exaggeration to call the all-star game of the Japanese music world. Fans were vibrating with anticipation for the spectacular stages they were about to see. Meanwhile, the staff were rushing around the waiting rooms to prepare for the Part 2 live broadcast. Go to the Johnny's side and tell KATTUN to get ready. Head to Sony Music and pass the word to TM Network as well. The staff were moving frantically according to the order of the cue sheet. In the midst of this chaos, the PD of Uticon was grinning ear to ear as he received reports on the viewer ratings. Hell yes. 35%. This is incredible. During Part 1, the ratings had stayed at the usual 10 to 15%, but as they entered Part 2, the numbers began to skyrocket. The Uticon PD couldn't hide his laughter. It was because they had hit 35%, even though heavyweights like Enfant Terribles hadn't even come out yet. It was obvious that the moment Enfant Terribles appeared for the ending, the ratings would explode. At this rate, won't we even cross 50%? Just as the Uticon PD was smiling while imagining a blissful future, a junior staff member, who had been running around like a headless chicken since the start of Part 1 due to issues with the cue sheet, dashed toward him once again. PD. What? Can't you see I'm busy? The junior staff member spoke with a face as pale as a sheet. The AVEX waiting room is empty. There's no one there. As soon as the junior staff finished speaking, the happy smile on the Uticon PD's face began to turn into a mottled red of pure rage. The time slot allotted to AVEX was a staggering 20 minutes. And now, it looked like that entire block was about to go up in smoke. Those bastards really left. What kind of brain-dead move is this? The Uticon PD was fuming at AVEX's attitude, throwing their weight around with zero consideration. No matter how urgent it is, do they really have to go this far? The band AVEX was currently pushing as their new stars, Zard, certainly had the potential to be icons. However, the Uticon PD could not logically understand why they were being so stubborn and demanding using merely promising rookies. He had to resolve this before the AVEX time slot arrived. The scene began to descend into total pandemonium due to the gap left by AVEX. In an attempt to fix the situation, the Uticon PD went to the Strawberry Productions waiting room where Enfant Terribles was located. "I'm really sorry, but could you possibly yield the ending to someone else? Hey Pops, you're asking us to give up the ending. You have to talk sense if you want us to listen." The muscular mixed-race drummer and the perfectionist bald bassist of Enfant Terribles flatly refused. Of course, the Uticon PD knew it wouldn't work and didn't press further. If he managed to offend them and Enfant Terribles also backed out, it would be a total catastrophe. In that situation, Hyde, who serves as their leader, placed his hands on Yokishi and Tanaka Shuji's shoulders and spoke up. How much time was allotted to them? About 20 minutes. That's roughly 6 songs, so I think we can handle it within Strawberry Productions. The moment Hyde finished speaking, everyone in the waiting room focused their attention on him. Can't Enfant Terribles, AAA, and Bikomachi just perform 2 more songs each? For Bikomachi, you can just call it an encore and have them go out again. That is true. The Uticon PD wore a stunned expression, looking like he'd been hit over the head with a blunt object. We still have some time. Let's talk about how to structure the stage. Wouldn't it look good if Bikomachi, being the youngest, did the opening, and then passed the baton to AAA, who coached them? In a very short time, a plan to fill the void left by AVEX was formulated. Watching Hyde, the Uticon PD was shaking his head in disbelief. Hyde, who immediately thought of something that even he, the PD, couldn't think of in his panic, was a massive genius. Lord, this kid, he would have done just fine even if he'd become a PD. The website for reading paid chapters is available on my Patreon. The number of chapters on Patreon, 137. Link, patreon.com/ultramagnus_t. Chapter 98, Uticon Special Performance. 1,693 words. Are you sure we should be doing this? The atmosphere at Apex was currently one of extreme tension. From the team leaders to the head managers of various groups, everyone in the conference room was doing nothing but staring at the clock. On the orders of the Apex Group chairman, they had taken the drastic measure of seizing the ending slot of the show. A boycott. They had finally committed an act that most agencies only talk about but never actually follow through with. They had even gone so far as to forcibly drag along artists who were adamantly opposed to the idea. The reason for this extreme protest was that the Entertainment Management Division, the primary cash cow of the Apex Group, was facing a massive crisis. The singers who had previously sustained Apex Entertainment had entered their twilight years, and their public image had soured due to the scandals that erupted during Asayan. While they had other revenue streams like music distribution, it simply wasn't enough to sustain the various other businesses they had aggressively expanded into. You know how the chairman is, so why ask? We have to do this much, or we'll get ripped to shreds when we're summoned to his office. But if NHK decides to retaliate? Another staff member cautiously raised an objection to the Apex department head. However, the department head shook his head, looking at the man as if he were a clueless amateur. Do you even know how many programs we run on NHK? Even if we flake out like this, as soon as we start pushing Kota Kumi or Hamasaki Yumi back onto the screen, things will return to normal. Do you still not understand how this industry breathes? I see. Apex Group did, in fact, possess the status to act with such audacity. From film distribution to music retail, and even the production of NHK programs, there wasn't a corner of the entertainment world where Apex's reach didn't extend. They assumed that if they simply lowered their heads a few times and smoothed things over later, NHK would tolerate it. There were already countless people within NHK who had received favors from the Apex Group, so what could they possibly do to them? That was the department head's logic. Tell the Zard manager to have her ready to move as soon as the ending slot is confirmed. Sir, do you think Ms. Komachi will actually cooperate? She has quite a bit of grit when it comes to these things. And what is a single artist going to do about it? Isn't this all for the sake of Zard anyway? If she refuses, just drag her here. Yes, understood. The Apex department head smiled as he watched the second half of the Uticon broadcast begin. With a 20-minute gap suddenly ripped into the schedule, the broadcaster would be helpless. Every executive at Apex believed that, for the sake of the airtime alone, NHK would eventually be forced to reach out to them. They should be calling now if they want us to finish preparations. Has there been any word from NHK? The department head was checking the situation every few minutes. They needed the call soon so that Zard could finalize her prep and be deployed. Sir, there's no contact yet. What? Are they trying to have a staring contest? They have no choice but to call us regardless. The Apex executives took it for granted that they held the initiative. To them, it was impossible to run a broadcast while excluding all the groups under the Apex umbrella. Therefore, it was certain that the ending of Uticon's second half would belong to Apex. Once the stage for KATTUN, the Johnny's group, concluded, the moment arrived for the groups from Strawberry Productions to fill the 20-minute void created by Apex's stubbornness. Before the performance began, the MCs started stalling for time. The Apex representatives were convinced that the call was finally coming. Wait. What is that? However, the announcement coming from the TV was something Apex never expected. The next stage is a special performance prepared by Enfant Terrible's very own label, Strawberry Productions. We're starting with Bikomachi, who received an explosive reaction in the first half of the show. Let's get things started with a warm round of applause. Watching the TV, the Apex department head shot up from his seat. In his mind, something impossible was unfolding. Get on the phone right now. What the hell is this nonsense? They had staged a boycott, but the boycott had been rendered meaningless. Far removed from the frantic atmosphere of the Apex Entertainment office, Bikomachi was stepping onto the stage to bridge the gap left by Zard. Despite the members' young ages, Bikomachi was a veteran idol group with 3 years of experience under their belts. Having struggled since the days when Strawberry Productions was just an indie label, they had worked through countless songs over the years. As a result, Bikomachi had plenty of tracks to pull out even for a stage assembled this abruptly. Among them, the dance track Star Rain was perfect for a situation like this. It was the song with the strongest K-pop vibe among their discography, designed to maximize the group's specific charms. Bikomachi, having already made a lasting impression during the first half of the broadcast, began to seize the audience's attention as they dominated the stage. Since Strawberry Productions had grown into a major agency, the girls had been thoroughly trained by professionals in the essential qualities of a star. They were no longer an idol group at the underground level. In the idol world, the more money you pour in, the better the group becomes. Wow, they're so cute. I think I'm becoming a fan of that girl Mimi. According to the cue sheet, this was supposed to be Zard's time slot, but the audience stopped caring about her absence. While Zard's fans looked bewildered and disappointed, the fans of other groups couldn't have cared less about their heartbreak. Block quote, we are STARTRAIN. The moment Bikomachi's center, AI, finished the performance with her trademark flair, the group known as the Mentors to Bikomachi fans, AAA, burst onto the stage. AAA. While they didn't quite reach the level of Enfant Terribles, they were the frontrunners of the Enfant Terribles invasion, who had achieved visible success on the Billboard charts. The crowd began to roar at their appearance. AAA started singing their representative track, Step by Step. It was a title that felt all too appropriate for the current situation. Step by Step, AAA was performing to pass the torch to Enfant Terribles, who would ultimately fill Zard's void with their own unique colors. AAA's leader, Nishijima Takahiro, caught his breath as he glanced back at the rascals waiting in the wings. When I first saw them at Asian, I never imagined they would rise this high. AAA were stars who had achieved significant milestones, but Enfant Terribles was more than qualified to take center stage. After all, it was the members of Enfant Terribles who had reached out to help AAA when they were on the verge of falling into an abyss. Finish it well. We've set the table for you. You got it. The three members of Enfant Terribles grinned and headed toward the stage. Immediately, the lighting in the Uticon studio began to shift. The spotlights that had been fixed on AAA only moments ago now illuminated each member of Enfant Terribles. Amidst cheers that eclipsed even those for AAA, Enfant Terribles began to move. As the act allotted the most time in the special performance, Enfant Terribles chose their signature song, Rock and Roll Star, as their opening number. Rock and Roll Star was a track overflowing with the raw ambition and self-assurance that the band had during their debut, a declaration that they would become rock stars. People often found solace in the message of conviction woven into this song. Block quote, "I live my life in the city. And there's no easy way out." As I began to play the guitar and sing, the already heated cheers reached a boiling point. I still couldn't entirely shake the sense of unease when performing songs I had essentially plagiarized from my past life, but it was no longer to the point where I couldn't enjoy the stage. That was because of the words Liam Gallagher had told me when we met again in the UK. When I asked him how he would feel if I had stolen his songs, he had replied, "I'm too busy doing my own thing to listen to whatever FING nonsense you're talking about." He told me that if I'm a rock star, I should live like one, that alone gives people strength. Block quote, "Tonight I'm a rock and roll star. Tonight I'm a rock and roll star." I could hear the audience starting to sing along to our song in a massive, unified chorus. I stepped back from the microphone and simply listened to the sound of their collective voices. I had heard the sing-along for Rock and Roll Star so many times I was almost tired of it. And yet, I couldn't hide the faint smile that tugged at my lips. This particular sing-along was special. Why? This was the Uticon stage, a venue where fans of a vast variety of different groups gathered. And yet, fans of all those different groups were singing Enfant Terrible's song as one. They had been doing it since the very first verse. It meant that even those who weren't our dedicated fans had listened to our music and memorized it. I might not be able to purely enjoy the heat the audience radiated toward me anymore, but I wasn't so far gone that I couldn't feel moved by a moment like this. If you're a rock star, act like one. Walk your own FING path. That's the responsibility you owe for the status you enjoy as a star. Watching that sight, I recalled the words of Liam Gallagher. In both my past and current life, he was my role model and my mentor. Chapter 99, Side Story, A Meeting in the UK. 1,453 words. In my past life, I had always yearned for the country known as England. It was the birthplace of the Beatles, the greatest band in the history of rock, and the home of Oasis, the band I loved most in my previous existence. For someone like me, who had devoted most of his life to rock music, England was a nation I couldn't help but respect. For rock enthusiasts, the UK is nothing short of a holy land. For the record, when I speak English, I use a Manchester dialect. It has a rough quality to the consonants, giving the speech a distinctive, clipped rhythm. In my past life, I adored the Manchester and Lancashire regions, and I learned English specifically in that Mancunian style just to communicate with the locals. Of course, I completely failed my CSAT English listening tests because of it. If you're used to American English, it's relatively easy to understand a British accent, but the reverse is definitely not true. How do I know that? Because that was exactly my experience in my past life. The rain in Manchester really never knows when to quit, does it? But even though I was walking the streets of the England I had so dearly loved and yearned for, I wasn't exactly happy. Every time I stepped onto these pavements, the weight of my karma came crashing down on me. Wait. Isn't this the building where they shot the cover for Oasis's first album? This country was a constant reminder that the success of Enfant Terribles wasn't built on my own talent or ability, but by stealing the inspiration of the great artists from my past life. Since starting a band in this life, I had ripped off countless songs, and the lion's share of them belonged to Oasis. That was simply because they were the ones I respected the most, and the ones who had the greatest influence on my life. In any case, I held my umbrella, and walked aimlessly through the drizzling streets of Manchester. There was a specific reason I had carved out time from my packed schedule to visit this city, but first, I wanted to burn the image of the city I loved in my past life into my retinas. I didn't have time to look around like this last time. This wasn't my first time in Manchester, but during the previous visit, I was too preoccupied with meeting Chris Martin and trying to shake off the crushing sense of debt in my heart to actually see the city. Though my past life had grown quite hazy, the way my heart was pounding now proved that my yearning for Manchester remained rock solid. Did he say to come to a club called the Boardwalk? The handsome blonde youth looked around, searching for a sign that read the Boardwalk. The reason the leader of Enfant Terribles, currently at the peak of his fame, had come to Manchester was to meet Liam Gallagher. To Hyde, Liam Gallagher was like the North Star, a celestial body that had provided the direction for his entire life. Tinkle. Hyde pushed open the wooden door, which felt like it might crumble at any moment from the moisture it had absorbed, and stepped into the club. This place is. As soon as he stepped inside, a familiar sight unfolded before him. The Boardwalk was the very club where Oasis had performed for 2 years during their indie days in his past life. He hadn't realized it just by the name, but seeing the massive Union Jack hanging behind the stage, Hyde knew exactly what kind of place he had stepped into. There, Liam was on stage, singing in his trademark posture. Despite being nearly 40, Liam was living a life intertwined with music, just as he had in the previous world. What's this? What brings a rock star all the way out here? I wanted to have a word with you, Mr. Gallagher. Hearing Hyde's words, Liam Gallagher stared at the youth before him with a look of pure confusion. He had liked the kid because he thought he was a reckless, bold rock star, but the boy standing in front of him looked like a brat who still needed a hand to hold. However, Liam Gallagher wasn't enough of a scoundrel to ignore a kid asking for help. Had it been the Liam of his youth, he might have ignored him while smoking a joint, but the man standing there now was an adult. How'd you even find this place? You said at the venue that if I came here, you'd buy me a meal. Liam Gallagher couldn't help but be shocked by Hyde's eccentricity. He had only said it as a joke, yet Hyde had actually tracked him down. From his perspective, it was incomprehensible that a star of Hyde's magnitude would seek him out. To Liam, who spent his days tightening screws in a Manchester factory, the fact that Hyde had come all this way just to talk was difficult to grasp. Well, I suppose I am a bit of a big deal. But Liam Gallagher was a man so thick with self-affirmation and confidence that he could write off even such an odd occurrence as a natural result of his own greatness. What would you think if I told you I released an album by stealing someone else's songs? Look, I'm busy enough just dealing with my own shit. What kind of fucking nonsense is that? Liam treated Hyde's words as total rubbish. Liam was someone who had devoted his entire life to music ever since he'd been struck in the head with a hammer, and had his ears open to the art. To his ears, Enfant Terrible's music was innovative and fresh, so much so that it felt like it had appeared out of thin air. What? Are you talking about homages? If that's the case, every moron shaking their arse on the BBC should be locked up. There was no such thing as truly original music anymore. Humans have limited preferences for sounds, and artists have to create music to suit those preferences. In fact, the better the artist, the more they utilized homages. Hadn't his own brother, who was now in the afterlife, spent half his time writing songs that were direct rip-offs of others? It's not an homage, what if I stole it wholesale? Why should I care? If they're that bothered, they should have released it to the world first. Liam couldn't understand why Hyde kept spouting this weird nonsense after asking for a chat. He was certain that Hyde, the leader of Enfant Terribles, was definitely on drugs. Nothing else could explain this situation if not a drug-induced trip. What if those songs were yours, Mr. Gallagher? What? My songs? Listen, kid, I've never written a song in my life. But if they were? I'm not in a band anyway, so who cares? I'd tell you to just use M. Doesn't that just mean my songs are that good? Liam Gallagher hated whining rock stars. When he was young, it was common practice to record songs you liked off the radio onto a tape just to own them. It was a natural human desire to want to possess and listen to a good song, even through illegal means. Who would hate their songs getting attention if they weren't even planning to be in a band? If you're a rock star, live like one. Stop whining. I don't know what's eating you, but if you bow your head, every single one of your fans has to bow theirs too. Stop fucking around with useless shit like this. Mr. Gallagher, I don't believe my success was achieved through my own skills. This position I have now, it's a burden. Liam Gallagher loathed rock stars who had everything and still complained. In his mind, rock stars had a responsibility to project positivity to their fans. He believed that was the only way a star living off the love of the fans could repay them. Therefore, a rock star had to walk their path exactly as they damn well pleased. If you're going to keep talking that shit, get the fuck out of my sight. Pardon? Act like a rock star. Walk your own fucking path. That's your responsibility for the status you enjoy as a star. As he said those words, Liam Gallagher slammed his fist into Hyde's face to wake him up. Whether in this life or the last, he was exactly the same. The website for reading paid chapters is available on my Patreon. The number of chapters on Patreon, 137. Link, patreon.com/ultramagnus_T. Chapter 100, Side Story, After Uticon. 763 words. Rock and roll star Enfant Terribles tears the stage apart once again. Apex's unauthorized absence successfully suppressed. The magic of Enfant Terribles, even other fandoms are enthralled. After the Enfant Terribles performance ended, the media went into a complete frenzy. The primary reason was the rarity of the occasion. Despite being a band born in Japan, it was incredibly difficult for the Japanese public to see them perform live. Since the release of their first album, Enfant Terribles had spent most of their time active in the United States rather than their home country. Tonight I'm a rock and roll star. Precisely because it was Enfant Terribles, the Uticon stage was transformed into a magnificent spectacle where every person in the building sang along to every lyric. For the record, the absence of Zard caused a massive controversy. Her name had clearly been on the Uticon lineup, yet she never took the stage. Apex attempted a desperate damage control maneuver, claiming that Sakai Izumi had complained of anemia, but public opinion was not easily swayed. Yes. Bikomachi is finally hitting its stride. In the aftermath of the performance Bikomachi delivered yesterday, the Strawberry Productions office was in a state of chaotic excitement. Standing in the middle of it all, a massive, satisfied grin broke across the face of Saito Ichigo. Miyako, I think we can move up the release date for the new Bikomachi album. Once this round of music show appearances with Enfant Terribles is over, let's get that album out and start the promotions immediately. Saito Ichigo couldn't have been happier. While Bikomachi's excellent performance was a factor, the mere fact that they shared a stage with Enfant Terribles had garnered them a level of public interest that was incomparable to anything they'd experienced before. In this climate, the song Cupid that Hyde had crafted would act as a razor-sharp blade, a blade that would carve through Bikomachi's competitors and elevate them to the summit of the idol market. With those thoughts in mind, Saito Ichigo looked over at Hyde, who was sprawling on the sofa, sipping an iced Americano with cubes of ice rattling in the cup. My lucky star, what brings you here? I didn't even call for you. Sato, what do you think was the real reason Apex bailed? After what I went through on Asayan, it feels personal. It's not Sato. It's Saito, you damn star. You don't need to overthink it. They tried to stage a boycott, and got stabbed in the back by their own scheme. Having honed a sharper intuition through running a major label, Saito Ichigo immediately deduced the logic behind Apex's boycott. Then do you think there's any chance they'll try to harm Bikomachi? No, none at all. From their perspective, there's no merit in picking a fight with another major agency like Strawberry Productions. You know how it is, the entertainment world is a web of interconnected interests. Hyde offered a bitter smile at Sato's words. Just as he said, the industry was a world that revolved strictly around business and mutual benefits. Lately, Hyde had been feeling this reality more acutely. As Enfants Terribles grew into bigger stars, the space once occupied by human elements like friendship was being steadily replaced by business. Yeah, I'm well aware. Of course, if they show any sign of doing something like that, we'll step in. Even if we have to leverage the influence of Enfants Terribles. Hyde felt that realization once more while looking at the men in front of him. The success of Enfants Terribles had turned even Saito Ichigo, who used to value humanity and loyalty above all else, into a cold-blooded professional. But if this were the old days, wouldn't you have stepped in first? You're the one who cherished Bikamachi like they were your own flesh and blood, Saito. Public and private matters have to be kept separate. I'm not just Bikamachi's manager anymore, I'm the president of Strawberry Productions. Hyde, what I'm doing now isn't a charity. It's business. There was nothing logically flawed in Saito Ichigo's argument. However, Hyde, the leader of Enfants Terribles, couldn't help but feel a pang of sorrow seeing everything surrounding him slowly turn into a transaction. Do you still consider AI to be your daughter? Of course I do. But AI the idol and Hoshino AI, my daughter, are two things that must be distinguished. You've changed a lot, Saito. Saito Ichigo let out a smile tinged with bitterness before opening his mouth to speak. Nothing in this world is forever, after all. Chapter 101, 100 Chapter Anniversary Side Story, Halloween Without AI. 2,835 words. Leader, we're actually a bit busy this Halloween. Hey man, my wife is nagging me, asking when I'm ever going to spend time with the kids if not now. Damn it. She was like an angel when we were dating. The day before Halloween. The morning at the Hoshino residence, which had temporarily relocated to New York for the production of Enfants Terribles' new album, was as cold as ever. Contrasting with the frigid atmosphere inside the house, the streets of New York were illuminated by jack-o'-lanterns carved from massive pumpkins, their orange fairy lights twinkling in preparation for the holiday. Some houses had already set out candy baskets for the little monsters expected to visit. The streets of New York, which had endured so much pain since the 2008 Lehman Brothers collapse, held an eerie yet joyful vibe. For the record, Yokishi and Shuji, who had started families of their own as time passed, planned to spend the day with their children, whom they had neglected due to the constant touring. Everyone's busy, I see. After meeting Yokishi and Shuji, Hyde made his way toward a lakeside cabin he had prepared in the States as a sort of vacation home. He simply wanted to escape the city's cacophony and find peace in a secluded place. Halloween was a day for children. Back when AI was alive, they would exchange candy and chocolate while making plans for the end of the year, but now that she had passed away, he had long since graduated from such festivities. Though he had children who shared both his and AI's blood, Hyde didn't have the confidence to look at faces that resembled her so perfectly. Why are there so many invitations? There were plenty of adults looking to enjoy the children's festival by throwing parties, but Hyde's life was far removed from such things. He wanted to avoid noisy crowds. Since tomorrow was the weekend, his plan was to take his medication, sleep in late, scribble down whatever melodies came to mind in his notebook, and just let the time drift by. To Hyde, medication was a good tool to help him forget the most colorful moments of his life. Regardless, the first New York Halloween following the revolution sparked by Enfants Terribles seemed grand, but Hyde was indifferent to the affairs of the world. Or so he thought. Until he opened the cabin's front door and the children, whom he had been avoiding since AI's funeral, shouted trick or treat at him. Papa! Did you not miss Ruby? I always miss my daughter. I'm sorry Daddy was so busy with work. As he spoke, moments he wanted to forget resurfaced. He blankly stared at the traces AI had left behind before belatedly greeting Saito Ichigo and Saito Miyako, who were sitting on the living room sofa. Hyde, have you eaten dinner? Saito Miyako, who was legally Hyde's mother-in-law, asked him in a tone filled with worry. I'm doing all right, mother. You damn son-in-law, you've lost all your muscle, are you actually eating properly? As per his habit, Hyde sat across from Saito Ichigo and Saito Miyako with a cigar and a glass of whiskey. Summer and autumn had passed, and the winter that held both Ai's birthday and the anniversary of her death was approaching. Only the crackling sound of firewood in the recently lit fireplace echoed around them. Just how long are you going to stay like this? You already sent that bastard Kamiki Hikaru to life prison, and buried the theatrical company he belonged to from the industry ages ago. Saito Ichigo broke the silence, taking off his trademark sunglasses to look Hyde in the eye and convey his sincerity. Father, you don't need to worry about me. You have to let go now. Nothing Saito Ichigo said was wrong. In fact, Hyde knew it himself. He knew that no matter how much you yearn for those who have left, they never come back. I don't know how. Saito, without AI, I'm just the frontman of Enfant Terribles. She was the only person who made me feel like myself. How am I supposed to bury that and just live? You have the kids. The children need you. That's why you're still alive. As Saito Ichigo said, these pitiful children who lost their mother to a madman needed a father. That was the reason Hyde, who had tried to reach Nirvana several times, miraculously survived and was still breathing. AI would want that too. Hyde, I believe the reason you survived in the emergency room that day was thanks to the soul of the child who had already left. Hyde listened to his father-in-law while looking at a photo tucked in his wallet from their happiest time. In the photo, AI was still smiling with the children, her face as beautiful as ever. After staring at the photo for a long time, Hyde made a face of resolve, threw the syringe that had been sitting on the table into the trash can and spoke. I think so too, father. Hyde intended to start acting like a father again, a duty he hadn't been able to fulfill for a while. Though it was still painful to look at his children's faces, which were the spitting image of AI, the living had to keep on living. Hyde drove out and bought the children's costumes. To ensure the children of the world's most famous band leader could walk the streets in peace, that much of a disguise was necessary. Ruby wore Yoshi pajamas from Super Mario, while Aqua was disguised as Mario. The elders of the Saito family and the sole adult of the Hoshino family smiled at the sight. The children, who looked exactly like the one who had left, seemed to have even inherited her personality. Father, you want me to do it too? You damn son-in-law, if you don't do it, there's no point in the disguise. Hyde didn't want to wear a costume. He argued it made no sense to walk around New York in a costume at his age. However, Saito Ichigo found Hyde's protests absurd. Hyde was still a vigorous man in his 20s. With all due respect to his deceased daughter, his son-in-law was a youth in his prime who wouldn't be out of place even if he chose to remarry at any moment. Eventually, Hyde punched holes in a McDonald's paper bag lying around the house and pulled it over his head. For the record, Ichigo and Miyako, who acted as parental figures for the orphaned Hyde, didn't mention how ridiculous it looked. And so, with Ruby in her Yoshi costume and Aqua as Super Mario in the back seat, Hyde began to drive, wearing a McDonald's paper bag with a holes cut out over his head. Damn son-in-law. Get back safe. Just as Hyde expected, Ruby and Aqua were thrilled. While Aqua seemed a bit embarrassed, Ruby expressed her joy with her whole body. The fact that shouting, trick or treat, at every house resulted in someone giving her candy and chocolate with a kind smile exhilarated the girl who looked just like AI. Furthermore, she seemed to feel a sense of pride seeing so many people, men, women, old and young, imitating her father, Hyde, on the streets. Papa. Look, there are so many people copying Papa over there. Whenever he saw someone dressed up like him or AI, Hyde would hand out a few pieces of candy from his own pumpkin basket. His sociable daughter had already made friends with a few kids her age despite not seeing their faces, and she was now leading a group of them around. Seeing Ruby chatting away with her friends, Hyde thought he had made the right choice in coming out. She's just like AI, the way she draws people to her. Like mother, like daughter. While he was worried about Ruby running around, as if she planned to sweep up all the candy in New York, Halloween with the children was a pleasant night for Hyde as well. Save for the occasional people who startled him, and ran away, triggering his trauma. It was his first Halloween outing in years. Hyde was reminiscing about memories from early in his marriage, shortly after the kids were born. He would have his arms full with the children, while AI, true to her free-spirited nature, would sweep up chocolates from the street with bold strides, and feed him her spoils like battle trophies. "It's been a while since I've seen you like this, hasn't it?" Hyde, who was leaning against a wall watching the kids, looked at a woman in surprise at the sound of a strangely familiar voice. He hadn't felt any presence at all, but a woman completely covered in a costume was suddenly beside him, eating Häagen-Dazs as she spoke. "Excuse me. What was that?" "Oh. I mean. It's been a while since I've seen such a lovely family. Halloween has been lonely for the past few years." She didn't seem like a dangerous person, unlike the one who murdered AI. He could feel a faint sense of affection for them in her tone. "You must like Halloween. I live for this day." The woman stood beside Hyde, leaning her back against the wall as well. "So why are you here alone? Doesn't it feel lonely?" "I just like watching the kids from here. My daughter looks exactly like my wife." Once he finished speaking, the woman sighed and began to ramble about this and that. She said the living have to live, and if he kept moping like this, his departed wife would be furious in heaven. She definitely didn't seem dangerous, but her attitude was strange. Most of all, her voice felt hauntingly familiar. I never mentioned being separated from my wife, do you know me?" "Hee hee. Your voice sounds familiar. Are you someone I know?" The woman let out a small gasp, muttering that she had made a mistake. Hyde stared at the woman's mouth, which was exposed so she could eat her Häagen-Dazs. He had a feeling that she was making a troubled expression, perhaps curling only one side of her lips up. Familiar faces and familiar expressions flashed through his mind, but Hyde quickly wiped those strange thoughts away. "I really need to quit the drugs. I suppose I have been using them a lot lately." Thinking that, Hyde narrowed his eyes and peered at the face that should have been invisible behind the costume. Just as Hyde was about to open his mouth to press the woman, a small child tripped over a rock while running. Instinctively, Hyde caught the child, preventing a fall. "Careful there, little one." It was a girl with purple hair and purple eyes. Perhaps shy, the child whispered "thank you" in a small voice before running back to her parents. Hyde nagged at the child's back not to run, just as he did with his own daughter. "You still can't ignore it when kids are in danger, can you? That's an adult's job. Aren't you worried someone might fall for you? That would be a crime." The woman leaning against the wall eating Häagen-Dazs commented, as if she were jealous. And then she let out another incomprehensible, strange remark. "Do you know me? You really seem like someone I know." "Hyde, you'll get hurt if you try to learn a woman's secret." The woman no longer even tried to hide the fact that she knew Hyde. At the same time, she seemed to have no intention of saying who she was. "Anyway, where did the others go?" "I was looking forward to that too." "What? Who?" "Your friends." If she meant his friends, she must be referring to Yokishi and Shuji, but Hyde couldn't understand why she was saying that. Shuji and Yokishi had long since left for Japan, where their families were. That fact had been reported extensively in the media. Anyone living in the States would have known. "Have you been living under a rock?" Should we at least introduce ourselves?" At Hyde's question, the woman simply stared at him. Or rather, she seemed to be staring. Hyde couldn't be certain because her face was covered by the costume, hiding the exact direction of her gaze. "Hyde. You have to be suspicious when a stranger approaches you. What if I were a really bad person? Why are you asking for my name? AI will be really angry." Somewhere in the middle, something like static noise could be heard, but Hyde let out a dry laugh at the woman's words. Who was the one who approached first and acted like they knew him? So you're saying you're a bad person? No, that's not what I meant. Hyde ignored the strange person who trailed off and tossed some candy to a passing child dressed as AI. The child, accustomed to people handing out treats, skillfully waved and went on their way. But why have you only been throwing candy to kids dressed as AI this whole time? Hyde didn't answer her. He just leaned his back against the wall, watching Ruby run around with her friends, and Aqua trying to calm her down. Hyde, you still love AI, don't you? Hyde's head snapped toward her. He frowned at the woman for stating the obvious. To Hyde, AI was his most precious existence, more valuable than anything else. But I think AI wouldn't mind if you dreamed of a future. Look for someone who can fill the void for the children. The woman made this request in a slightly sad tone. Since this was something a fan who knew of his recent troubles might say, Hyde simply lit a cigarette in silence. Papa. Let's go that way. Ruby shouted from a distance. Would you like to come along? My kids are quite cute. Hyde, who had yelled back to his daughter that he would follow, instinctively asked the costumed woman, who now felt a bit like a friend. I'm going now. The woman rummaged through her pocket, pulled out a caramel, and handed it to him. A Korean milk-flavored caramel. It was Hyde's favorite sweet snack. Since Hyde is always giving things away. This is a gift from AI. Since she can't be by your side anymore, don't give everything away. With those words, the woman placed the caramel in Hyde's hand. Well then, Hyde. See you next Halloween. She spoke and strode away with bold steps, before Hyde even had a chance to say goodbye. Then, she suddenly spun around and opened her mouth as if for a final farewell. I love Hyde very much too. That is absolutely not a lie. It was a sudden remark. And an incredibly strange one to hear from a stranger. AI will be mad if you follow her too soon. With that, the woman vanished. Even though she was bundled in layers of costumes, the woman vanished into the darkness of the Halloween night only seconds later. Wait, did she say AI? Hyde felt as if he'd been hit in the head with a blunt object and began to run toward where the woman had disappeared. AI. The voice, the tone, and even that confident stride, everything was AI. She was the one who knew him better than anyone yet knew nothing of his current state. And knowing that he loved Korean milk caramels more than any other snack was something impossible for anyone but AI. It was impossible, but it was certainly his wife, AI. Only after she had disappeared into the darkness did the noise in his head clear enough for him to realize. Even though everything had pointed to her being AI, he hadn't seen it. Hyde ran in the direction she had gone. But no matter how much he ran, there was no sign of the woman completely covered in her costume. Ha! AI, I'll do as you say. But I'm not remarrying. AI had briefly appeared in the shadows and then naturally vanished, as if following the laws of nature. As if his meeting with her hadn't even been real, she left without a trace. With the single exception of the milk caramel in his hand. Hyde clutched it, hot tears streaming down his face as he looked into the empty air. Papa. When are you coming? Hyde quickly wiped his tears and walked toward his daughter. He thought about coming out next Halloween with his father-in-law, Saito Ichigo. Hyde, who had been wandering after losing his other half, could now stand on his own as a father. Halloween, the day when the souls of the dead visit the human world before traveling to the afterlife. The website for reading paid chapters is available on my Patreon. The number of chapters on Patreon, 137. Link, patreon.com/ultramagnus_t. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Novels Wonderland.